If you've ever wondered why life hurts even when nothing seems wrong, you're not alone. What if the real reason isn't out there, but buried deep within? Have you ever noticed that strange heaviness in your chest? That unshakable sense that something, somewhere, is off? Even when things look fine on the surface, there's this quiet ache. Maybe you've tried it all. Meditation, advice from well-meaning friends, pretending you're okay, hoping the pain will pass on its own. But it doesn't, does it? The suffering stays, like a shadow clinging to your footsteps, no matter how fast you try to run. Let me tell you something that perhaps no one else has dared to say out loud. Your pain doesn't come from the world, it comes from within. From the part of you that you've forgotten, or worse, abandoned. Carl Jung, one of the most profound thinkers of the human psyche, once said, "What you do not bring to consciousness returns as fate." And that is exactly what's happening to you. Life has been trying to speak to you, through discomfort, through patterns, through quiet suffering, but you've drowned it out with noise, distractions, addictions, or endless busyness. You say to yourself, "It'll pass." But it never really does. Because pain doesn't want to be ignored, it wants to be understood. This video isn't just another self-help monologue filled with sweet lies or temporary relief. I won't give you ready-made quotes or empty positivity. What I offer instead is something much more dangerous. Truth. Not the kind of truth that comforts, the kind that shakes you, that confronts what you've hidden from the world and from yourself. So give me just a few minutes, that's all, and I'll show you where your suffering really comes from and why it keeps coming back. Not with tricks, but with awareness. The kind that burns away illusion. Maybe you're at your lowest right now. Maybe you're still functioning, smiling for others while screaming inside. Or maybe you've gotten used to the pain, living with it as if it were just part of you. Whatever your situation is, I have to tell you something most people never hear in time. Suffering stays because you haven't looked at its root. And Jung, he spent his life exploring that root, the unseen layers of the human soul. He believed that only those brave enough to descend into their darkness could ever find real light. If you're willing, if even a small part of you is ready, what you'll hear next could change your understanding of yourself forever. By the end of this video, you won't just think differently, you will feel differently. Because once you see where your pain is really coming from, you can never unsee it again. Let's begin. You think you're suffering because of your boss, your partner, your past, your bank account, society's pressures. And yes, those things are real. But the kind of pain that paralyzes you, the one that haunts you in silence, comes from something far deeper. It comes from being disconnected from your own essence, from forgetting who you really are. Jung called it the greatest tragedy of the soul, to live a life that is not yours. And maybe, without realizing it, you've been doing just that. From childhood, you were trained to fit in, to behave, to follow rules, to say what's right. And bit by bit, you drifted away from yourself. You became a character written by others, a puppet for the comfort of society. You silenced your desires, buried your sadness, swallowed your rage, and in doing so, you abandoned your soul. And now you carry a kind of pain that you struggle to even name. It doesn't scream, it doesn't announce itself with drama, but it eats away at you from the inside. This is the pain of disconnection. The silent agony of someone who looks in the mirror and no longer recognizes who's staring back. You've grown so used to the role assigned to you. You've worn the costume for so long that you forgot it was never truly yours. But your soul, it remembers. The soul feels. It feels when it's living a lie. And when it's pushed too far from its truth, it starts to scream. Not with words, but with symptoms. Anxiety, insomnia, apathy, guilt. These are not flaws. They are alarms, signals from the unconscious that you are betraying yourself. Make no mistake, it's not failure that hurts. It's the illusion of perfection you built to avoid failure. It's not loneliness that wounds. It's the emptiness of sitting alone and realizing you don't know who you are without others around. And no, it's not other people who truly hurt you. It's what you do to yourself every time you abandon who you really are just to maintain a false image of who you think you should be. So long as this disconnection persists, so will the suffering. Because you're trying to heal a surface wound, when the real injury is rooted deep within your psyche. But here lies the most crucial insight. This pain is not a punishment. It is a message. Jung believed that suffering is not something to be eradicated, but to be understood. He saw pain as the first necessary step toward profound transformation. Pain exists to push you back, not into despair, but home. Back to your essence. Back to the parts of you that you lost, ignored, or buried. And that return begins the moment you stop running and start listening. Listening to the memories you've silenced, to the emotions you've judged, to the truths you've forgotten. In the next part of this journey, we'll face what is both the most feared and the most liberating force within the human psyche, the shadow. It's the part of yourself that you fear the most, but it holds the key to your healing. It is there, in the darkness, that the seeds of your true self lie waiting. If this message speaks to something in you, subscribe to the channel. That's how you support content that dares to go deeper than comfort. You say you want to stop suffering, but most of the time, you're fighting the symptoms, not the source. Anxiety, guilt, anger, sadness. You treat them like enemies, as if they're diseases to be cured or flaws to be hidden. But they're not enemies. They're messengers. And the true enemy, it's the part of you you've refused to look at. Carl Jung called it the shadow. And don't deceive yourself. We all have one. No one escapes it. Not you. Not me. Not even the people who seem the most in control. The shadow is everything you've repressed, hidden, denied, or buried. It's the desire you were told was wrong, the anger you swallowed for years, the fears you've learned to mask with strength, the ambitions you dress up as humility, the sexuality you pretend doesn't exist, the envy you hide behind politeness. The shadow is made of every part of you you were not allowed to be. But they never truly die. They wait in silence. And the more you ignore them, the more power they gain. Think back. Those moments when you exploded without warning. When you sabotaged something beautiful. When you said, "I don't know what came over me." That was the shadow. It slips into your thoughts, colors your emotions, shapes your decisions, without you even noticing. Jung said it best. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You think your suffering is bad luck, karma, maybe even injustice. It might simply be your shadow, trying to wake you up. And it will keep haunting you until you finally turn to face it. The problem is, facing the shadow takes real courage, because doing so means shattering the illusions you've built around yourself. It means standing in front of a mirror and, for the first time, seeing what you've always tried to hide. You'll have to stop blaming the world. You'll have to stop seeing yourself only as the victim and start recognizing that inside you, there is also a darkness. A monster, yes, but a very human one. A part of you that's been repressed, misunderstood, judged, exiled. But here is the turning point. The shadow is not your enemy. It is not there to ruin you. It is the part of your soul that you rejected to survive. And like any part that has been cast aside, it only wants to be seen, to be heard, to be brought home. Jung never believed in destroying the shadow. He knew better. He believed in integrating it, transforming it into clarity, into authenticity, into power. Because what you reject weakens you, but what you embrace sets you free. And now that the shadow stands before you, now that you've named the darkness, what comes next? Action. In the next part, we will explore what it means to begin the true path of healing, the kind that doesn't come from books or quotes, but from walking into your own fire and not turning away. Because knowing your shadow is only the beginning. What you choose to do with it, that changes everything. You've come this far. You've dared to acknowledge your disconnection. You've looked directly into the eyes of your own inner darkness, and now you've reached the moment that separates the few from the many. Confrontation, understanding is not enough. It lights the way, but it does not carry you through. Healing demands movement, courageous, raw, and often painful movement. And now comes what most people will never do. Walk through your internal hell, eyes wide open. Jung was never vague about this. He knew the road to the self passes through the shadow. It is narrow, treacherous, and lonely, and yet there is no other way. This courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to move forward despite it. Facing the unconscious means surrendering control. It means taking off the mask, giving up the comfort of victimhood, and accepting that a part of your suffering has always come from within. It means telling yourself the truth, no matter how brutal it is. But what does this really look like in practice? It starts in the body. That knot in your stomach when you're with someone who drains you. That tightness in your chest when you swallow yet another yes that should have been a no. That heaviness in your limbs when you wake up to live a life that doesn't belong to you. These are not just symptoms. They are messages, clues from the unconscious. The soul's way of screaming when the mind pretends not to hear. So start small. You don't need to solve everything at once, but you do need to begin. Write down your dreams. Notice the emotional triggers that catch you off guard. Watch the patterns that keep repeating year after year. Every breakdown, every overreaction, every strange impulse, they all carry a hidden message. The unconscious does not speak with logic. It speaks in symbols, sensations, impulses. Your task is not to suppress these messages, but to listen, not quickly, not judgmentally, but deeply. This is not about self-comfort. This is about self-confrontation. And one of the most powerful tools for this is what Jung would call active imagination, but which you can begin with deep writing. Sit down every day and write as if you were whispering your secrets into a place that will never judge you. Write the things you're ashamed to feel, the thoughts you pretend you don't think, the confessions you've never dared say out loud, because when you release what was once unspeakable, you reclaim your power. Another tool, equally important, is the therapeutic mirror. That mirror might be a trained therapist or someone wise enough to hold space for you, because sometimes we need another pair of eyes to help us see what we cannot. Jung once said, "The unconscious is not a garbage dump. It is a living intelligence. It doesn't exist to punish you. It exists to teach you, to guide you, and, if you're willing, to heal you. But this healing has one requirement. You must stop running, because as long as you flee from your pain will chase you. As long as you build walls, the suffering will seep through the cracks. But the moment you stop, the moment you face it, something shifts. The pain changes shape. It begins to soften, to reveal, to open. And in that moment, you realize something no one ever taught you. Pain is not your enemy. It is a portal. And this is where we now arrive. What is the real purpose of pain? Why does it linger even when everything on the surface seems fine? Why does it return in cycles, especially when you think you've finally escaped? And more importantly, how can this pain become your greatest ally on the path to liberation? Most people spend their lives in a war against pain. They take pills. They bury themselves in distractions. They chase validation in shallow relationships. They scroll endlessly, post smiles, pursue goals, all to avoid feeling. But here's a truth that few dare to accept. What you try to eliminate, you empower. Pain that is silenced becomes louder. Pain that is denied becomes destructive, because pain is not here to be destroyed. It is here to be heard. Carl Jung never saw suffering as a flaw in the design of life. He saw it as a call, a sacred signal from the soul. Something inside is broken. Something inside needs care. This can't go on. Every anguish, every ache, every whisper of discomfort is a code, and behind that code is a message. But to decipher it, you must stop seeing pain as an enemy and start seeing it as a guide. Think about the major transformations in your life. Did they begin in comfort, in safety, or did they begin in crisis? Probably the latter. It is in the chaos that the soul reorganizes itself. It is in the collapse that the psyche reaches for renewal. That is where the real journey begins. Jung once wrote, "Suffering must be experienced to its depths. Only then can it be overcome." You can't bypass pain. You must walk through it. Let's ground this in reality. Picture someone who always says yes, always available, always smiling, never complaining. Their life looks perfect, but deep inside, they are collapsing. Soon, anxiety creeps in, insomnia, exhaustion, a sadness they cannot name. They go to doctors, run tests, take sedatives, but nothing changes. Why? Because the body is speaking what the mind refuses to acknowledge. They are betraying themselves in the name of being liked, and that betrayal has a cost. The soul begins to protest, or consider someone who keeps repeating the same relationship pattern. Attracted to those who are emotionally unavailable, always ending up rejected, always left feeling not enough. They think it's bad luck, or maybe karma, but it's not. It's a mirror, a reflection of an old wound, likely from childhood, a wound that has never been healed. And life, patient and persistent, keeps bringing the same pain until they finally stop, turn inward, and say, "What are you trying to show me?" Because pain never punishes. It points. It points to what must be healed. It forces you to pause, to feel, to change. And as paradoxical as it sounds, the very thing you've avoided your entire life might be the thing that finally saves you. When listened to, pain becomes your teacher. When understood, pain becomes your compass. And when integrated, pain becomes power. But now that you know this, you are faced with a new responsibility. Because ignoring pain is no longer ignorance. It is a choice. And more than that, it is a choice to abandon yourself. Running from pain is not an act of survival. It is an act of self-abandonment. But if you find the courage to sit with that pain, with humility, with presence, with an open and curious heart, it will lead you somewhere unexpected, not into darkness, but into peace. And this peace doesn't come because the world becomes perfect. It comes because you become whole. In the next part, we will enter that place. The other side of pain. What happens when you stop resisting and start integrating everything you've rejected in yourself? Jung said it clearly. Healing is not the absence of pain, but the transformation of pain into consciousness. And that is exactly what awaits you now. If what you're hearing so far resonates deeply, you'll find even more clarity and guidance in my ebook, Beyond the Shadow. It breaks down Jung's core ideas and gives you practical tools to understand yourself more deeply. You'll find the link in the pinned comment. Now, listen closely, because this is the turning point. After countless inner battles, after breaking and rebuilding, there comes a moment, not loud, not theatrical, but so profound it reorients your entire soul. It's like a breeze that slips in through a crack, so subtle you might not even notice it. But it shifts everything. It's the moment you stop fighting, and for the first time, you feel something rare, something you didn't think was possible. Wholeness. But what does it mean to become whole? It doesn't mean becoming perfect. It means dropping the sword. It means no longer trying to kill off your pain, your flaws, your humanity. It means looking at your anger, your jealousy, your fears, your shame, and saying, you too are part of me. And when you stop the war against yourself, something miraculous happens. You don't become someone else. You become yourself. Carl Jung called this process individuation, not in the sense of standing out, but in the sense of becoming undivided, authentic, integrated, no longer fractured by masks and suppression. And this authenticity does not make you arrogant. It makes you real. It does not inflate your ego. It grounds your soul. You no longer seek to be impressive. You seek to be honest. This is not about finding yourself. This is about reclaiming what was buried. It's about walking through the ruins of your inner world and daring to rebuild. Brick by brick, truth by truth. At this stage, you finally understand. Your pain does not define you. It was never your identity. It was the path, not the destination. You begin to see that every collapse had a purpose. To strip you of the false, to burn away illusion, to teach you what was real. But be warned, truth does not come without a price. It demands presence. It demands responsibility. It demands change. Because once you have tasted your own power, once you have seen your shadow and survived it, you can no longer pretend you are helpless. You begin to see who uplifts your soul and who poisons your spirit. You stop tolerating things just to avoid conflict. You stop shrinking just to be accepted. You stop betraying yourself for peace that was never real. And slowly, quietly, you start saying no without guilt. You start saying yes to yourself. This inner shift doesn't need applause. It is silent, but it is revolutionary. Because now you no longer live to impress. You live to express the truth of who you are. And it's in this moment, when the masks fall and the shadows are no longer feared, that you realize something no one ever taught you. You were never broken. You were only buried. You never needed to be perfect to deserve love. You never needed to be healed to be enough. All you ever needed was to come home to yourself, to stop living in lack, chasing validation, waiting for someone else to save you, because that peace you spent years seeking was never out there. It was waiting quietly within you. But now comes the moment that separates the awakened from the asleep. This is the point where most people stop. The pain has eased, the storm has passed, life begins to flow, and comfort returns. And with that comfort comes temptation to settle, to relax, to forget. But Jung warned us, the journey is not over until your healing becomes contribution. So I ask you, now that you've crossed the darkness, now that you've met your shadow and emerged whole, what will you do with your light? Will you bury it? Or will you become a torch for others still lost in the dark? This is the final step. The conscious decision to live awake, to exist with intention, with integrity, with impact. Because once you've seen truth, you can no longer pretend to be blind. Once you've felt your soul ignite, you can no longer return to numbness. You stayed through every word, every uncomfortable truth, and that already makes you rare. Most people run when the mirror gets too clear. Most choose to sleep. You didn't. And because you stayed, because you faced yourself, you now have a choice. To repeat the patterns that kept you small, or to take full command of your own existence. It doesn't matter how much you've suffered. It doesn't matter what they did to you. What matters now is what you will do with all of it, because that pain, it can become strength. That emptiness, it can become stillness. Those wounds, they can become wisdom. But know this. The awareness you've gained here comes with a cost. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow your truth. And from now on, you are called to live on a new level. That means showing up every day with more presence, more responsibility, and more self-respect. You are not required to be fearless. You are required to be honest. You are not required to have all the answers. But you must stop lying to yourself. You don't need to be 100% ready. You never will be. What you need is to choose again and again to live in truth, to act even when it's hard, to speak even when your voice shakes. Because knowledge without action is just another form of self-betrayal. Carl Jung reminded us, individuation, the process of becoming whole, is not a weekend transformation. It is the work of a lifetime. And today, maybe for the first time, you've taken a real step on that path, not as someone who is broken, but as someone who is becoming, not as punishment, but as a sacred invitation to return to your essence. Now I want to hear from you. What part of this message struck deepest? What truth made your chest tighten, your soul stir? Write it in the comments. Let it be your commitment to yourself. And who knows, your words may be the medicine someone else needs to hear right now. And if this video moved you, if it revealed something you've buried for too long, then don't stop here. Subscribe, follow this journey, watch the next video. Because this is just the beginning. The shadow is deep, but the light waiting on the other side is even deeper. I'll see you there.